salt. Push, 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 push.
Like velvet, yeah, like velvet.
Yes, chef. Pas bien. Change-le.
Yes, chef.
Maintenant, hein? Chef, fais ça. Show me, show me, show me. No, odds at the same time. Odds at the same time. We got it. Yeah? Okay, good. Everyone, great. Yes, chef. All right, double of everything, two of everything. Yes, chef. Come on, guys, think of it up. Come on, this is the dish. You are looking at that all the time, yeah? You have eyes on it the whole time, so you get the pass.
Yes, chef.
Yeah, look at me. Yeah?
Yes,
You
chef.
up for it?
Yes, chef.
All right, let's go! Yes, chef! Come on, Michelle.
I'm MandieSmith. I'm a registered dietitian. I've been a dietitian for 22 years, and I work here at the Culinary School. I'm the dietitian that teaches chefs about good nutrition. I teach the healthy foods class, and I also teach Introduction to Food Science, and I teach the nutrition for dietary managers, and then I proctor or supervise the interns for the internship for dietary managers course. So when I was in college, my the first major that I had was physical therapy. And so I took all my classes, and I had like a 3.7 GPA, which was pretty good. But then when I applied to physical therapy school, I didn't get in because my GPA wasn't high enough. And so I applied I worked another year in a rehab hospital, and I applied again after taking some more science classes, and I still didn't get in. So I changed my major to dietetics because it was the closest major where I could get out of school the quickest, since I'd already spent 3 years in school. And it was all about chemistry, biology, anatomy, physiology, and nutrition. And so that's how I got into nutrition, was through chemistry, which is kind of unusual because most people become dietitians because of food, because they like food or they're interested in food. And so, yes, so the science of food is what brought me into dietetics, and then being able to work with people to help them to change their life through good nutrition. And so then I did an internship and sat and took my RD exam and started working in hospitals and did clinical dietetics and did outpatient stuff. I did lots of outpatient education for all kinds of stuff. And then I started teaching at Pulaski Technical College after my son was born, because I wanted to be home with him most of the time. And so I started teaching a health class in the math and science department, and then I added a nutrition class. And then after my daughter was born, I took a year off, and then I taught a night class until she was in, I think, pre-K, and then I started teaching nutrition and health, and did that until I started full-time about 10 years ago. I think August of 2011 is when I started teaching full-time. And then I came over to the culinary school about 5 semesters ago. I think this is my 5th semester or 6th semester.
Over here.
So I'm really happy to be here because it's a great place, and these chefs work really hard, and it's very challenging. I think it's very important for chefs to understand nutrition and to try to put as much nutrition on the plate as they possibly can. And it's not just calories, it's also vitamins and minerals. So we hear a lot just about calories, but it's so much more than that. And so if chefs will just get interested in nutrition and then just continue to learn about it throughout their career, they're going to do better, and they're going to be able to attract more people into their restaurant. And so they'll know what to do when somebody comes into the restaurant and they say, I'm allergic to shellfish. Well, then the chef will know why, and they'll know what to do, how to change, how to modify the menu so that they can serve shellfish-free food. to that person. So it's just going to help bring more people in the door of the restaurant, which is what a chef wants to do to stay in business.
Yeah.
Well, I think the very first thing a chef needs to be convinced of is that healthy food can taste good. You have to spend a little bit more time and effort, especially with your lean cuts of meat and your preparation techniques, your cooking methods. You have to spend a little bit more time building flavor in those types of animal proteins than just like, say, a ribeye. Take a ribeye, well, it's got lots of fat on it, in it, around it, and you just have to serve it. It's not, you hardly even have to put salt and pepper on it, right? And so you don't have to spend much time with a high-fat meat. But when you're thinking about a lean cut or plant-based protein, then you have to put a little bit more time and effort into it. And so building flavor through using herbs and spices, preparation techniques, cooking methods, marinades, wet rubs, dry rubs, whatever, smoking, different cooking methods, that's going to make the healthy food taste good. Because that's where chefs really need to convince themselves. And that's the first thing I try to do in healthy foods, is to disprove the myth that healthy food does not taste good. And so I also teach my chefs that there's no such thing as a bad food. You can use all different types of food in moderation. So
good nutrition in a restaurant doesn't have to be the complete removal of cream and butter,
that's exactly
sugar
right.
and salt.
That's exactly right. We know that saturated fat can be 10%, less than 10% of our total calorie intake, and we can still be healthy. And so our saturated fat is our solid fat. So we can still use a little bit of butter and coconut oil and our animal fat in our cooking and be within a perfectly healthy range. It's all about moderation. But when a chef is building a plate, the first thing they need to think about is the non-starchy vegetable that's in season. Start from there and then think about maybe the starch and the animal protein or the plant-based protein if they're going that direction. And then think about how I'm going to put a little dairy with this and a little fruit maybe for dessert or on the side with this. And then they're good. If they're following that choose my plate tool, which is what the USDA wants the chefs to follow, is that. And so you're looking at 5 different areas of food. When we see culinary medicine being taught at the medical school here in Little Rock and all around the country, culinary medicine is being taught. And so what we're teaching those doctors is to steer your patients toward the Mediterranean diet. That's what that's based on. And so the more a chef can think about that, and the blue zones around the world and how people eat, and because it's not just food, it's lifestyle. So you have to take into a lot of considerations. But depending on where you are, where your restaurant is, and what type of client or customer you're trying to bring in the door, most definitely it's marketable and you can make money doing it. What we've seen in this pandemic is that a chef is going to have to pivot and know how to be flexible in designing their menu, and maybe going from a gourmet, come in and sit down, white tablecloth restaurant, to here, I'm going to produce family style meals that you can now pick up at curbside. And so you have to know how to do that. You have to be flexible. You have to know how to design and build a menu based on good nutrition, what people want to stay in business. So not only do you need to know about nutrition and how to cook, but you also need to know how to deal with people, manage people, be courteous, polite, and friendly with your customers and your suppliers and all of the people that you have to deal with in a business. You have to know how to run a business to run a restaurant. And so you can't just have one skill set. It's many skill sets. A chef is a very creative, hardworking, flexible type personality that's usually pretty friendly and usually pretty type A. Not always, but usually. A chef has to be able to, has to be a people person, really.
Sure.
And that's probably why a chef gets into culinary school, and what they want to do with culinary school is because they want to take care of people. It's a different way of taking care of people, and so when you know how to put healthy food on a plate, then you can do that. You can help do that. I think a chef has a lot more what's the word? Influence. I think a chef has a lot more influence than they realize. And especially with the popularity of cooking shows and competitions, cooking competitions, and all of that. I think a chef has a lot more influence than they realize. And so if the chef and the dietitian can walk down the road together and challenge and encourage each other to put healthy food on the plate, then I think we're going to be better off as a culture because we're not going to be as sick. Right now, more Americans die of heart disease than any other disease in the United States. And COVID is a big deal, and every person that dies of COVID is terrible. The majority of people that are going in the hospital, 77%, are either overweight or obese from COVID. And so there's an obesity aspect to the COVID infection and being put on a ventilator that not a lot of people are talking about, which is very concerning to me because it's the elephant in the room, right? And so we need to be talking about it. And we need to be talking about our heart disease, and we need to be talking about our diabetes, and we need to be talking about our cancer. We need to be talking about all that stuff because the chef can influence what a person puts into their mouth. Because the American people like to go out to eat. And so if a chef says, okay, well, on this half of my plate, I've got my non-starchy vegetable, and here I've got my animal protein, but I'm going to put 4 ounces on that plate instead of 12. And here I've got my starch, but I'm going to put a cup instead of 2. And so that's a much healthier meal. It's not necessarily different ingredients or even cooked differently, but it's a much healthier meal.
So I don't have to get rid of the ribeye steak.
No, most definitely not.
I just shouldn't serve a 16-ounce.
You just don't need a 16-ounce ribeye steak for one person. 4 people need to share a 16-ounce ribeye steak. And so, when a chef, in my class, when they look at their protein RDA and they calculate how much protein they need for their own bodies, and then we look at, and I show them how much protein they're taking in, which is way too much for most people, then they're like, oh, maybe we don't need to eat meat 3 times a day. Maybe we maybe we can only eat it once a day and be perfectly healthy, or even more healthy. Because what comes along with that animal protein is saturated fat, and saturated fat is what leads to heart disease. I want my class to change their life. I want them to realize that they need to be more aware of the nutrition that they put into their body and take better care of their body. Not only what they put in it, but the amount of soda that they drink, the amount of water that they drink, whether or not they move their body through exercise, and how much they sleep. So it's all sorts of things, and maybe that comes from me being a health teacher for so long. I taught health for 16 years, so maybe I'm just in that mode, and that's the way I think. But I also want it to be practical, so for people to understand, oh, I don't have to just eat cottage cheese and green beans the rest of my life, or whatever, to go on a diet. Diet is not something that I ever encourage. I encourage people to make small changes in their lifestyle overall so that they can be healthier and feel better and have less disease. And so I think it's more of a holistic viewpoint and approach. When I first started off as a dietitian, I thought I could really help people one-on-one, but then only about 20% of people would actually take my advice, right? And the doctors, only about 1% would listen to the dietitians, sadly. It's not that way anymore, but that's how it was when I started out. And then when I realized that I could teach more people at the college level, I chose to do that. And then when I realized that I could teach chefs, I chose to do that.
You want to change the world.
Because I want to educate as many people as I possibly can. And the way to do that is by educating chefs. Once again, I don't think chefs realize how much they influence. What I always encourage my students to do is to meal prep for themselves. So take a Saturday, a couple hours, or Sunday, a couple hours, or Monday morning, a couple hours, and prep some food for the week. That's grilling or baking some meats or putting it in the crock pot. That's baking a couple, 2, 4, 5 potatoes, maybe steaming some rice. That's cutting up your raw vegetables, having your yogurt in your refrigerator. It does not have to be hard, but meal prep is the way for a chef to feed themselves healthy food, because your body is the way you make money as a chef. Okay? Not only your creativity, but also your fingers and your wrists and your hands and your shoulders and being able to stand on your feet, but your body. So if your body breaks down or you get sick, you can't make money. So it's so important for a chef to nourish themselves well. It's also important for a chef to exercise. So I always encourage my students to figure out when they're going to exercise and what they're going to do. It doesn't have to be hard. You don't have to go anywhere special. But do it at the beginning of the day, before the shift. Because after the shift, you're going to be too tired. Sometimes you might have a break in the middle, like between lunch and supper shift, that might work out, where you could do a 30-minute or hour. But you might be deep in meal prep for your supper meal during that time. So what I tell chefs is to make sure that you exercise before you go into work. And also to give yourself off at least one day a week, just for your own mental health, exhaustion, just so that you can rest and recover. And it would be best, of course, if you had 2 days off in a row per week. So when you're making your schedule, that would be best. Whether that's Monday, Tuesday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever that is. So that if you're in with another chef in the restaurant, then y'all can overlap and y'all can take off. But to actually give yourself time off. Because all these type A personalities, hard-working people that think that they have to be there for their restaurant to run correctly need time off. Because if you don't take time off, you're going to get sick, you're going to get burnt out, you're going to get stressed. And what happens with stress? You release cortisol, which is a hormone that makes you build up weight around the midsection of the body. And that leads to all the diseases, all big 3 diseases: the heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and the cancer. So you've got to figure out how to decrease your stress level without drinking alcohol until you pass out at night, or just working yourself to death. And that, I think if more chefs realize at the very beginning of their careers that they've got to take care of themselves, then we would have healthier chefs for longer. Right. But if you're a hard worker and you come to work,
We're going to make it work.
Right.
Whatever we need to
Right.
do for them.
if you're there, you're sober and you're working, then you'll have a job. You will have a job.
So
There's a myth that I've run across since I've been in this culture of, I don't even know what to call it, culinary school culture,
Okay.
or culinary world culture, and it is that a good chef cannot be a skinny chef.
that is a statement that floats around.
Okay, that I've heard over and over again, and that really makes me angry because not only can you not judge somebody's ability to cook by their appearance, but there's so many things that go into weight anyway that it's just a terrible statement. It's very it's a myth. It's not true. And I've heard it from people that have been in the industry for 60 years. I've heard them say that, you know? And so we got to get that out of our culture. And another thing I would like to make sure that we have in our culture is when you're working on the line and you're hot and you're moving, to drink water. Because if you start the habit of drinking water while you're on shift, then you're not going to have a lot of the issues that come from weight gain because you're drinking soda all day. That is all.
You're still here? It's over. Go.